I didn't expect the Christmas message to irritate me, but the moment my husband's sister sent that text, asking if her whole family could come over since she didn't feel like cooking this year, something inside me tightened the way a door tightens before a storm pushes through it, and I stared at the screen feeling that familiar pressure in my chest, that quiet resentment that comes from years of being the one everyone depends on without ever asking if I'm tired. The message wasn't even a request. It was a declaration, a decision she had already made on my behalf, and before I could respond, a second message followed, the one that shaped everything that came after. Is your husband and his family coming for Christmas? Perfect. I'm on vacation, you're in charge. Those last 3 words sat on my skin like heat, spreading slowly, demanding a reaction I wasn't ready to give. It wasn't the words themselves but the entitlement behind them. The way she assumed that because I was the calm one, because I rarely complained, because I always held everything together, I could be used as a holiday caretaker while she enjoyed herself somewhere warm and expensive, sipping cocktails and pretending her life was effortless. I stood in my kitchen holding the phone, listening to the kettle click off behind me, and the air felt heavier than the morning fog outside. I knew the pattern. I had lived inside it for years. My husband's family had a way of placing burdens on me with soft voices and sharp expectations, making me feel responsible for keeping peace, for solving problems, for smoothing out the cracks they created but refused to own. And because I tried to be the bigger person, they mistook that grace for availability, mistook my silence for consent, mistook my warmth for weakness. But this Christmas was already emotionally charged. My son had barely spoken to me in weeks. My daughter was drifting into a world I couldn't fully reach, and my husband was caught between trying to protect me and trying not to upset his family, a balancing act that exhausted him as much as it suffocated me. Still, I replied politely, even though my fingers hesitated on the screen, typing words I didn't mean. Sure, no problem. I could feel myself lying to keep the peace, lying out of habit, lying because I knew the cost of saying no would be heavier than the work of saying yes. By the next morning, the house felt smaller, the walls closer, as if preparing themselves for the chaos that would soon fill them. I cleaned more than necessary, moved furniture, organized toys, even though I kept telling myself it was just one day. Just Christmas, just a family gathering, nothing extraordinary. But the truth deep inside me whispered otherwise. I wasn't preparing for Christmas. I was preparing for a storm. And by the time their cars started pulling into the driveway, loud and full of energy, carrying noise and perfume and judgment, I felt something inside me shift like a thread being pulled from a tightly woven cloth. I plastered a smile on my face because it was expected, because the role had already been cast for me long before this day, but behind that smile was something new, something forming slowly, something I didn't yet understand. They walked in with their children, their bags, their stress, their complaints, their loud opinions about my house and my cooking and my life, and I welcomed them because that's what I always did. The reliable one, the solid one, the place where everyone could drop their chaos and walk away lighter while I carried the weight alone. But as they settled in, each of them slipping into comfort while I slipped into responsibility, I realized that this Christmas would expose something I wasn't prepared to face. Not their disrespect, not their entitlement, not the way they used me. I had seen all that before. But something about me, something I had buried under years of service, something rising now like water against a closed door. And when my husband's sister walked over, sunglasses still on indoors, smiling like someone who had just enjoyed the best morning of her life, she touched my shoulder lightly and said the words that solidified everything. See? I knew you'd handle it. You're good at this. She walked away laughing, leaving me in the center of my own living room holding a bowl of half-washed vegetables, feeling a stillness settle into my bones, the kind that comes right before a person realizes their entire life is about to change. I didn't know how or when, but I could feel it pulsing through me quietly, waiting for the right moment to make itself known. And Christmas was only beginning. The moment I opened my eyes the next morning, I felt the weight of the entire house sitting on my chest like a silent expectation, heavy and familiar, the kind that waits for you before you even swing your legs off the bed. And as I listened to the muffled footsteps downstairs and the sound of a kettle boiling, I realized my husband's family had already begun their day without considering that I might be struggling from the exhaustion of yesterday. But that was typical of them, typical of the way they existed loudly while I held everything together quietly. I sat there for a moment, staring at the soft morning light filtering through the curtains, and the truth I had ignored for years began to whisper louder. I had always been the backbone, the caretaker, the emotional buffer, the fixer of chaos, the one who made everything look smooth even when my heart was breaking inside. It wasn't anger I felt. It was something deeper, a quiet ache of being unseen, unappreciated, and taken for granted, not just by strangers but by people who shared my last name through marriage. By the time I walked downstairs, the house was already filled with the kind of noise that drains a person rather than energizes them. Children screaming, pots clattering, someone complaining about the Wi-Fi, someone else asking why breakfast wasn't ready yet, and all of it built a pressure behind my eyes, a pressure I forced myself to swallow because this wasn't the first time I felt this way. It was just the first time I considered not enduring it. When they saw me, there was no good morning, no acknowledgement that I was the one who prepared the rooms the night before, no recognition of the work I had already done. Instead, they pointed to the fridge, asked about food, told me what the kids wanted to eat as if I were a member of staff, as if my presence served a function and nothing more. Even my husband, bless him, tried to defend me gently, tried to remind them that it was supposed to be a shared Christmas, that everyone should help, but the way they brushed him off, laughing, dismissing his words as if he was just being overly sensitive, made me realize something painful. They didn't respect him either when it came to protecting me, and that hurt him more than he knew how to express. As I stood by the sink washing dishes they had piled up before I even woke, my mind drifted to all the years I spent trying to fit into a family that had already decided who I was before they met the real me. The years I spent accommodating their moods, their demands, their unspoken expectations, all while shrinking myself a little more each time just so peace could survive another day. A slow heat began rising in my chest, not anger exactly, but a dawning awareness that I had allowed this pattern to shape my life for too long, that I had contributed to my own exhaustion by constantly choosing silence over confrontation, compassion over boundaries, love over self-respect. And as I wiped my hands and turned around, I saw something that shook me. My husband kneeling in front of his nephew, trying to tie the boy's shoelaces while the boy's own parents scrolled through their phones, oblivious, comfortable, dependent, treating him the same way they treated me. That sight pierced me deeply because I knew how hard my husband worked, how much he sacrificed, how much he tried to make his family proud, and yet they still saw him as someone they could lean on without ever giving back. It wasn't just me they disrespected, it was both of us. And it was in that moment something inside me shifted, something firm and undeniable, because for the first time I saw clearly that this wasn't just about Christmas or babysitting or chores. It was about a cycle that needed to end before it swallowed us whole. I took a deep breath, grounding myself as I felt a new energy building inside me, an energy that came from finally recognizing the truth rather than running from it. I walked into the living room holding the weight of years in my chest, ready to tell them calmly yet firmly that things needed to change, that their entitlement wasn't kindness, that their dependency wasn't love, that their comfort was costing me my peace. But just as I opened my mouth, the front door burst open and something, or rather someone, stepped inside unexpectedly, freezing the entire room and silencing every voice including mine, because the moment I saw who it was, I realized that whatever I thought I was ready to confront would be nothing compared to what was coming next. For the rest of that morning, the house felt like it was holding its breath. I kept replaying my sister-in-law's face in my mind, the forced smile, the sharp eyes scanning my living room, the way she said "you're in charge," like she was handing me a problem, not a holiday. By noon, the tension finally cracked. I was in the kitchen seasoning chicken when my daughter Mia rushed in. She looked pale. "Mom," she whispered, "you need to come and hear this." My heart thudded. I wiped my hands and followed her quietly to the hallway. She pointed toward the guest room, the one I'd cleaned and air freshened all morning. Voices floated out. My husband's sister. Her husband. And another voice, my mother-in-law. All three of them had arrived hours earlier than planned. I pressed a hand over Mia's to steady her. Then we listened. What I heard made my stomach twist. "She won't suspect a thing," his sister said, almost laughing. "Good," the mother-in-law replied coldly. "We must do it before she notices." "Do what?" My pulse raced. Her husband lowered his voice. "We'll make the announcement after dinner. She can't stop it then." "Announcement? Dinner? Before I notice?" Mia gripped my arm. "Mum, are they talking about you?" I swallowed hard. I don't know yet. But I did know one thing. Whatever they were planning, it wasn't good. Just then the hallway floor creaked under my foot. Silence slammed into the room. The footsteps. Coming straight toward the door. I grabbed Mia's hand. The knob turned. And I stood face to face with the woman who had come into my house smiling, while plotting something behind my back. Her eyes widened when she saw me eavesdropping. "Is there something you're looking for?" she asked, lips curling into a slow, satisfied smirk. And right then I realized. This Christmas wasn't a holiday. It was a trap. For a moment we just stared at each other in the hallway, me holding Mia's hand and my mother-in-law wearing that calm, poisonous smile she always saved for moments she wanted to dominate. She didn't blink. She didn't flinch. She just stepped closer, brushing past me as if I were furniture in my own house. Behind her, my sister-in-law and her husband emerged from the guest room, pretending to act normal, but their eyes gave them away. Guilty. Nervous. Too rehearsed. "Ah, you're home," my mother-in-law said sweetly, even though she knew I'd been home all morning. "We were just settling in." Settling in? While plotting something they had to do before I noticed? I forced a smile. "Arriving early, I see." Her smile sharpened. "We like to move in silence." Silence. Of course. They'd come early so they could rearrange my house, my Christmas, maybe even my family before I had time to react. My husband finally appeared from the backyard, wiping sweat from his forehead as if he'd been working. "Babe, they're here. Isn't it great?" Mia looked at me, silently begging me not to explode. I didn't. Not yet. Instead I said, "Let me finish in the kitchen." As I walked away, my mother-in-law called after me. "We'll be joining you. We have a lot to discuss before tonight." A lot to discuss. Tonight. The announcement. My hands shook as I returned to the cutting board. I started chopping onions just to keep my mind steady, but my thoughts were racing. What were they going to announce? Why did they need to hide it from me? And why did they sound so certain that I couldn't stop it? I heard chairs moving in the living room. Then whispers. Then hushed arguing. Every sound scraped my nerves. Finally, Mia came in and stood beside me. "Mum, they hate you." Her voice cracked. I dropped the knife and held her face gently. "No, sweetheart. They don't hate me. They fear what they can't control." She nodded slowly, but I could see the worry still in her eyes. Before I could comfort her more, my husband walked in looking uneasy. "Babe, they want to talk in the living room." Of course they did. I wiped my hands, steadied my breathing, and stepped out. All three of them were sitting like a panel. Eyes sharp. Faces unreadable. My mother-in-law leaned forward. "We won't waste your time," she said. "Tonight, in your home, we will be making a family decision. You don't need to be involved. You only need to accept it." My heart hammered. "What decision?" I asked. Her smile widened. Slow, deliberate, cruel. "You'll find out at dinner." And every instinct in me screamed. Whatever was coming was about to change everything. I didn't sleep that night. Not even for a minute. I lay awake listening to every small noise in the house. Footsteps, whispers, doors opening, doors closing, hushed conversations happening downstairs when everyone should have been in bed. The whole house felt heavy, like it was holding its breath along with me. I kept replaying the conversation with my mother-in-law over and over. "Tonight, in your home, we will be making a family decision. You don't need to be involved. You only need to accept it." Every word echoed like a warning. Mia slept beside me, curled tightly like she was bracing herself against everything happening around us. At one point, maybe around 3 a.m., she whispered without opening her eyes, "Mum, don't let them take anything from us." I brushed her hair back gently and whispered, "I won't. Not this time." But the truth was, I didn't know how. By morning, the house had already changed. My mother-in-law was in the kitchen, rearranging my spices as if she lived there. My sister-in-law was wiping down counters that were already clean, humming that same irritating tune she used whenever she wanted to perform innocence. Her husband had taken over the backyard, moving chairs and setting up tables I didn't approve. And my husband, he kept pretending this was normal. Every time I tried to talk to him, he avoided eye contact. Kept saying things like, "They're just excited. It's only for Christmas. You're overthinking." But the look in his eyes betrayed him. He knew something and he was hiding it. Around noon, Mia came to me with a folded piece of paper she'd found on the dining table. I think this was meant for Dad." I unfolded it. My chest tightened. It was a handwritten list, titled Family Meeting, Final Plan. The first 2 lines were harmless. Present the Christmas gifts. Share the end-of-year blessings. But the third line paralyzed me. Discuss living arrangement change. Living arrangement? Who's, what? And why were they discussing it before telling me? My heart thudded painfully. The fourth line was worse. Proposed temporary move to mother's house for unity. Unity. Their favorite word when they wanted control. My hands began to shake so violently that Mia took the paper from me, her small face pale. Mum, are they trying to move us? No, I said quickly. No one is moving you anywhere. But my voice trembled. I could hear it. Mia could hear it too. Before I could hide the note, my husband walked in. When he saw it in my hand, his face drained of color. You weren't supposed to read that, he said quietly. So it was true. So that's the decision? I asked. You're planning to take my child away for Christmas? To your mother's house? Without me? He looked at everything except my face. It's just until after New Year. My mum thinks. No, I cut in. Your mum doesn't think. She commands. And you obey. He didn't argue, which told me everything. That was the moment something inside me settled. Not anger. Not fear. Resolve. If this Christmas was going to become a battlefield, then I wasn't going in unarmed. By 4 p.m., guests were starting to arrive. Uncles, cousins, church members, people who saw my mother-in-law as a saint. The house smelled of roasted chicken, jollof, spices, and deceit. My mother-in-law was dressed like a queen preparing for coronation. Her daughter hovered beside her like an advisor. And my husband stood between them, silent, tense, conflicted. I stood at the staircase watching them while the rooms buzzed with forced joy. Everyone laughing. Everyone eating. Everyone dancing. No one noticing the storm that was about to break upstairs. Then around 7 p.m. my mother-in-law tapped her glass loudly. Everybody gather please. We have a very important family announcement. The room filled instantly, chairs scraping, voices softening, all attention turning toward her. I remained standing. She didn't like that. I saw her eyes flick to me with annoyance, but she masked it with a sweet, saintly smile. Today, she began, is not just Christmas Eve. It is a night for unity. There was that word again. Fake nods spread across the room. She continued, as many of you know, our family has undergone changes. Misunderstandings. Distance. I felt dozens of eyes dart toward me. She clasped her hands dramatically. But tonight, by God's grace, we are correcting that. For the sake of the children. For the sake of our legacy. Murmurs of approval filled the room. Then she looked at my husband. Sons, speak. He swallowed and took a shaky breath. So, after discussing with Mum and everyone, we think it will be good for Mia and I to spend some time at Mum's house. Just for a few weeks. To reconnect. To heal. My ears rang. He didn't even say you. Just him and Mia. My mother-in-law smiled like she was witnessing prophecy unfold. There was clapping. Ritual clapping. As if they were applauding my removal from my own family. I felt Mia clutch my hand tightly. Her nails dug into my skin. She was trembling. Say something, Mum, she whispered. Please. I breathed slowly, stepped forward, and the room went quiet. Very quiet. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I spoke calmly. First of all, I said, thank you all for gathering. I know unity is important to this family. My mother-in-law looked pleased too soon. But I need to clarify something. I raised the note they had tried to hide. This decision was made without me. Discussed behind my back. Planned in my home while I was cooking for all of you. A ripple moved through the crowd. My mother-in-law stiffened. I continued, you said this is about unity. But unity doesn't happen in secret meetings. Unity doesn't require removing a mother from her child. My husband looked down. And unity, I said slowly, is not built on power plays wrapped in holiday cheer. That one hit her. Her face tightened, only for a second, but I saw it. Someone from the back spoke timidly, is the child going with her mother? Another voice, shouldn't the decision include both parents? My mother-in-law's jaw twitched. He forced a laugh. Everyone, don't be swayed by emotions. Our goal is stability. We are trying to help. No, I said softly. You are trying to control. The room gasped. I stepped forward, calm but unshakably firm. Mia is my child. This is my home. And any decision about her life will be made by us, not by a panel, And certainly not by someone who sees me as an obstacle rather than a parent. For the first time my husband looked at me, really looked, and I saw the conflict in his eyes turn into something else. Recognition. Maybe even guilt. My mother-in-law tried to interrupt, but I held up my hand. And one more thing, I added. If anyone tries to remove my daughter from this house without my consent, that is not a family decision. That is a legal issue. That silenced everyone. In one breath the room shifted. Whispers started. People moved uneasily. My mother-in-law's smile cracked, just slightly but enough. She knew she'd lost control of the room. She knew the announcement had backfired. Then, in the heaviest silence of the night, Mia stepped forward. She didn't hide behind me. She didn't whisper. She said loud and clear, "I'm not going anywhere. And you can't decide my life without my mum." There was the moment everything changed. My mother-in-law tried to recover. "That's fine," she stammered. "We weren't forcing anything. We were only—" Her voice choked when she saw the crowd's faces. People weren't agreeing anymore. They were judging. She had exposed herself without me needing to lift a finger. The atmosphere collapsed. Conversations became awkward. Someone turned off the music. The celebration died an instant death. I didn't need to win loudly. I had won quietly, politely, completely. Around 11 p.m. one by one people started leaving. Even her supporters avoided looking at her directly. By midnight the house was silent again. But something else was happening. My mother-in-law wasn't leaving. Neither was her daughter. Nor her son-in-law. They were still here. Still whispering. Still plotting. And deep in my chest, a cold realization hit me. They weren't done. Not even close. The house was quiet in the way storms are quiet before they break. Everyone had gone home. The music was off. The lights were dim. But the tension felt alive, crawling across the walls, sitting in the corners, filling every shadow. I put Mia to bed, tucked her in, kissed her forehead, and stayed until her breathing softened. Her tiny hand stayed wrapped around my fingers like she was afraid I would vanish if she let go. When I finally left her room, I walked back into a house that no longer felt like mine. My mother-in-law was pacing in the living room, still in her expensive lace dress, now slightly wrinkled from anger. My sister-in-law sat stiffly on the couch, looking like she had swallowed her own pride and it tasted bitter. Her husband whispered something into her ear, and she shot him a sharp glare as if even he was the enemy now. My husband sat at the dining table with his head in his hands. Not one of them looked up when I entered. Not one. I stood there for a few seconds waiting, observing, calculating. Finally I spoke. "Are you all staying the night?" My mother-in-law stopped pacing and turned to me slowly, forcing a smile that was more teeth than warmth. "Of course we are. There is still discussion to be had." Discussion. Their favorite word for schemes. "I don't think there's anything left to discuss," I said quietly. "Oh, there is," she snapped, her voice cracking like a whip. "You embarrassed me tonight in front of the entire family." I told the truth. Her eyes flared. "The truth is what I say it is." That sentence hung in the air like smoke. My husband finally lifted his head. "Mum, stop." "You stop," she barked. "You let her humiliate me. In my presence. In my son's house." "This is my house," I corrected calmly. "We bought it together. We built it together. You can raise your voice, but it won't change ownership." Her nostrils flared. My sister-in-law spoke next, her voice cold and sharp. "You think you won tonight? You think because some people muttered in your favor that you've accomplished something?" I didn't respond. "You have no idea what we still have planned," she added. That caught my attention. "Planned?" I repeated. "For Christmas. For the new year," she said, folding her arms. "For everything that follows." She looked too confident. Far too confident. My mother-in-law walked closer until she stood only inches from me. "So hear me clearly," she said in a low voice. "We are not finished." Something inside me trembled, not from fear but from a deep, heavy understanding. They meant it. They genuinely believed they could bully me out of my own life. I took a slow breath. "I am going to sleep," I said. "It has been a long day and I will not argue at midnight." "You're not going anywhere," my mother-in-law said, blocking my path. "Sit down. We are talking now." I raised my head slightly. No. Her jaw dropped. My sister-in-law whispered, "Is she mad?" "No," I replied calmly. "I'm simply not your servant." Before any of them could respond, my husband stood up abruptly. "Enough," he shouted. "It's Christmas. Why are we acting like enemies? Mum, stop. Please." They stared at him, shocked by his sudden boldness. He walked toward me, slowly, carefully, and for the first time all night he spoke with clarity. "She's my wife. I won't let you talk to her this way." His mother gasped like he had committed a holy crime. "You," she whispered. "You have chosen her over your blood?" "I didn't choose anyone," he said. "I'm just not going to let you destroy my home." For a moment I saw the man I married. The man who used to protect me, support me, stand in front of me when life was too heavy. But the moment didn't last. My sister-in-law slapped her hand against the arm of the couch. "No. You're weak. You always have been. You let her control you." "Don't talk about my husband that way," I said softly. She froze, stunned that I dared speak. My mother-in-law inhaled deeply, her chest rising like she was gathering all her rage into something sharp and poisonous. "You will regret this," she said to me. "Both of you will." I was about to respond when suddenly, Mia screamed upstairs. A loud, terrified, blood-chilling scream that sliced through the walls. All of us turned at once. "Mom." My heart stopped. I raced up the stairs so fast I nearly fell. My husband followed closely. My mother-in-law and her daughter sprinted behind. When I burst into Mia's room, she was sitting up in bed, shaking violently, pointing toward the window. "What is it?" I rushed to her. She couldn't speak, her lips trembled too much. She pointed again, eyes wide and wet. My husband ran to the window and pulled the curtains. There was nothing there. But for a child to scream like that, something had frightened her deeply. "Baby," I said gently, "tell me what you saw." She swallowed hard. Someone was standing there. My blood froze. My mother-in-law asked sharply, "Are you sure?" Mia nodded frantically. "Yes. A man. Wearing a cap. He looked inside the room. Like he was watching me." My husband glanced at me, panic flashing across his face. My sister-in-law whispered, "A man? At this hour?" My mother-in-law shook her head quickly. No, maybe it was the neighbor." "It wasn't the neighbor," Mia insisted. "He was right at the window. He looked straight at me." She burst into tears. And in that moment everything changed. Because my mother-in-law's face shifted, not into fear but into something calculating, like this unexpected chaos had just given her a new idea. A new plan. A new opportunity. My husband lifted Mia into his arms, trying to comfort her, but my mother-in-law stepped forward. "This is dangerous," she said dramatically, turning toward me. "This house is unsafe. A strange man looking into a child's room? Oh, absolutely not." She looked directly at me as she spoke the next words. "Mia cannot stay here. She must come with us." I felt the floor tilt beneath my feet. So this was it. The real plan. The real purpose behind all the tension. The real power move. They didn't need to remove me. They only needed a reason to remove my daughter. And now they had one. Or so they thought. My mother-in-law placed a hand on her son's shoulder. "Son, you must protect your child. Pack a small bag. She can sleep at my house tonight. We'll take her until things settle." "No," I said instantly. "This is not about you," she barked. "This is about the child's safety." I said no. "Mia is not safe here," she insisted. "A stranger at her window. And you think taking her away from her mother is the solution?" I snapped. My husband looked torn, lost, confused. Maybe just for the night," he said softly. I turned to him slowly. Very slowly. "Are you serious?" He swallowed. "It's just to keep her safe." "You think she's safer in a house where your family plots against me every day?" My mother-in-law gasped. "How dare you?" "No," I said firmly. "The real question is, how dare you use a frightened child to push your agenda?" The room went dead silent. My husband looked between his mother and his wife like he was stuck inside a cage built by both. And Mia, still shaking, buried her face in my shoulder. That was all I needed. I stood up slowly, holding my daughter protectively. "She is staying with me," I said. "Tonight. Tomorrow. Always." My mother-in-law's eyes darkened like a storm cloud. "This is not over," she hissed. But she was wrong. Something had shifted. Not because of their threats. Not because of their planning. Something shifted because Mia had seen a stranger at her window. And I had seen the way my mother-in-law reacted to it. Not with fear. Not with concern. But with opportunity. And that told me one thing. Whatever was coming next was far darker than anything they had tried before. The house didn't feel like a home anymore. It felt like a stage where every shadow hid an audience, and every movement carried a consequence. After my mother-in-law's final threat, the night settled into a strange, heavy quiet that made even the ticking clock sound loud. I held Mia until her breathing became slow and steady. But even as she slept in my arms, I could feel her tension. That scream had come from something real. Something she felt. Something she saw. And the thought of a stranger at her window made a cold line run through my spine. I laid her gently in my bed and sat on the edge in the dark, listening to the old house breathe. Down the hall, I heard murmurs. My mother-in-law's sharp voice cutting through the silence, my sister-in-law's quick replies, and my husband's softer, uncertain tone drifting between them. They were arguing, whispering, planning, always planning. I didn't need to hear words to know that every sentence was about me, every thought was a calculation, and every silence was another decision forming. I wasn't meant to sleep. They wouldn't allow that kind of peace. And I didn't want it anyway. Not that night. Not after everything. An hour passed before I finally stood. I needed water. I needed air. I needed space to think. I walked quietly down the hallway, avoiding the creaky spots I had memorized over the years. But when I reached the living room, I froze. The room was not empty. My sister-in-law stood by the window, pulling back the curtains just slightly, peering out into the darkness. Her posture was stiff, her breathing fast. She didn't hear me approach until I spoke. "Looking for the man Mia saw?" She jumped so violently that she slammed the curtain shut. "What are you doing awake?" she hissed. "I live here," I said calmly. Her hand dropped from the curtain and her lips pressed tightly together. She wasn't dressed for bed. None of them were. They were waiting for something. Or someone. Before she could answer, my husband entered from the dining room. His face dropped when he saw us standing there. "You're still up," he said gently, as though attempting to diffuse tension that had already swallowed the room. "Yes," I replied. "And clearly, so is everyone else." He rubbed the back of his neck, a nervous habit he never outgrew. "We're just unsettled with what Mia saw." I observed his eyes. He was tense too, but not in the same way his family was. He was torn, pulled apart by two worlds he never learned to balance. One world birthed him. The other world built him. And he was always trying to stand in the middle without realizing the middle was the most dangerous place to be. "She's safe with me," I said. "You don't need to worry." My sister-in-law scoffed so loudly the room seemed to silence around it. "Safe?" she repeated. "How can you talk about safety when a man was at her window?" I didn't respond. I simply watched her. She wasn't worried. She was agitated, yes. But her agitation wasn't fear. It was frustration. Like someone whose plan wasn't unfolding quickly enough. I stepped closer. "Tell me something," I whispered. "Are you truly scared for my daughter? Or scared that your plans for tonight didn't go the way you expected?" She blinked too fast, her throat tightening. "If you are implying—" "I am not implying anything," I said. "I am observing." Before she could speak again, the front door handle turned. All three of us snapped toward it. The door opened slowly, too slowly, and the figure that stepped inside was unmistakable even in the dim light. My mother-in-law. But she wasn't alone. Behind her, moving like a shadow detached from the night, was a man. Broad. Wearing a cap. The same description Mia gave. The air left my chest. Pure instinct made me take one step back. My husband's face drained of color. "Mum, who is that?" But she didn't answer him. She answered me. "Someone who came to help us," she said calmly. "Someone who understands the seriousness of this situation." Her eyes gleamed with something cold, something triumphant, and in that moment I understood why she wasn't shocked by Mia's scream. Why she didn't panic. Why she immediately seized the chance to remove my daughter. She already knew a man was outside the window. Because she had brought him. The realization hit me slowly, like cold water spreading across skin. This wasn't fear. This wasn't coincidence. This wasn't danger that happened to locate us. This was a plan. A plan they created. A plan they advanced. A plan they intended to finish tonight. My husband stepped in front of me protectively. "Mom, what is going on? Who is this man?" She lifted her chin. "A private security officer I hired to handle the situation." "A private security officer doesn't stare into a child's window in the dark," I whispered. She didn't flinch. She didn't deny it. She didn't even pretend to soften. Instead, she turned to her son and said, "She is twisting everything. This is exactly why she is not fit to keep that child alone. She sees danger where there is none." I felt my jaw tighten. How easy it was for her to lie with confidence. How effortless her manipulation had become. My husband looked torn again, but this time something in his eyes cracked. A small fracture where truth was trying to break through. "Mom, did you bring this man here earlier? Before we arrived?" She didn't speak. He didn't need to. The silence was the answer. My sister-in-law finally stepped forward, desperate to regain control. "Look, we all need to calm down. Emotions are high. Accusations are flying. Let's just sit and talk like adults." "No," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "No more talking. No more manipulating. No more plans behind my back." I walked around my husband and stood in front of the man in the cap. He wasn't looking at me. He wasn't looking at anyone. He was looking straight up the stairs toward the room where Mia slept. A protective instinct I didn't know I possessed surged through my chest like fire. "You need to leave," I said to him. He didn't move. "This is my home," I added louder now. "You are not welcome here. Leave." My mother-in-law stepped between us. "He is staying. For safety." "No," I said again. "He is not." She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a low, venomous whisper. "You think you can stop me? You think you can protect that child from everything I have planned? You don't understand how easily you can lose." Something in me snapped. Not anger. Clarity. For months, for years, I thought their manipulation was about control. Family politics. Upbringing. Pride. Ego. But no. It was deeper. Darker. Rooted in something I didn't see until that moment. Something they were willing to fight for. Scheme for. Even break into a child's room for. Because this wasn't about Christmas. This wasn't about obedience. This wasn't even about respect. This was about ownership. Ownership of my daughter. Ownership of my marriage. Ownership of my entire life. And I was done. I stepped toward her until our faces were inches apart. "Touch my child," I whispered, "and you will learn exactly who I become when I am protecting something I love." She tried to speak. I saw her lips part, ready to spit venom, but something behind me drew her eyes upward. Her expression shifted. From rage. To surprise. To something like fear. I turned slowly. At the top of the stairs stood Mia. Half asleep. Clutching her teddy bear. Watching all of us in silence. The room froze. Every adult stilled, breath held, eyes locked onto the tiny girl in pink pajamas standing under the dim hallway light. She didn't say a word. She didn't cry. She didn't hide. She simply looked at the man in the cap. And then she whispered something so soft, so fragile, so unexpected, that the entire house seemed to stop breathing. "I know him." Every muscle in my body went cold. My husband's mouth fell open. My sister-in-law stiffened. My mother-in-law's eyes widened like she had been caught. The man in the cap didn't move. Not an inch. Mia lifted her finger and pointed, not trembling, not confused, but certain. "He was in Daddy's old photos." And just like that, the truth snapped into place. Because the man Mia pointed at was not a stranger. He was not a security guard. He was not a random threat. He was someone from my husband's past. Someone my daughter recognized from pictures I didn't know she had seen. Someone my mother-in-law had brought into my house, into my child's room, into my night. For a reason she refused to explain. A reason that suddenly felt much darker than anything I had imagined. I stared at my husband, waiting for an explanation. But he was staring at the man too. And the look on his face told me everything I needed to know. He recognized him. He knew exactly who he was. He knew why he was here. And whatever secret my husband's family had been hiding, it was standing in my living room. Before anyone could speak, the man finally lifted his head, looked straight at me, and said one quiet sentence that split my world open. "Your husband didn't tell you the real story." And the screen would cut to black right there, leaving the audience desperate, stunned, and needing to rewatch everything to connect the clues.